So go ahead and give us your answer. Where do you think your organization is today? Like anything, it's a journey. Organizations take several years, often to do this, 2 or 3 years, to fully implement this across their organization. Some, though, only apply it in certain areas. So that's another way of doing it. Looks like we've got about a third of the people having responded so far. Get a few more responses in here. Colleagues listening in, I think, are always interested in where the industry is. So this is a great international group we have today. It'd be interesting for people I know to see where the rest of the profession is. All right, things stabilizing here, I think. So about 21% not started yet, another 24% just starting. 27% have identified skills and courses for some roles, and about 18% for most or all roles. So it's actually pretty good between started and almost complete. That's pretty good. So again, this does mirror what you would think is happening based on the literature, conference topics, webinars that are out there in the space. So thank you for sharing. Close the poll down and move on. So now let's contrast that with strategic goal-based learning. So I am assuming that this will be newer to most than the role-based learning because it is not a popular topic out there in the field right now. I think it should be. And we'll see what you think in a few minutes after we introduce you to it and see what questions you have. So this strategic goal-based learning is a special category of learning designed specifically and intentionally to help achieve the CEO's most important business goals. Now we know you've got a lot of learning on your plate. You've got leadership training, you've got compliance training, you've got basic skills training, reskilling, upskilling, onboarding. You have a lot going on in the learning space. This is one more category of learning that I think is often overlooked. This goal-based learning is a proactive process, and if it's strategic, it starts with the CEO, where you would go to the CEO and find out what the goals are going to be for the coming year. So ideally, you're doing this proactively as part of your company's business planning process. Caterpillar, for instance, was on a calendar year fiscal year. So I went to my CEO in August of each year, more than 4 months before the fiscal year started, to find out what the goals were going to be for the next fiscal year and who the goal owners were going to be and what the priorities were for the CEO. CEO always had a pretty good idea, even at T-minus 4 months, what the goals were going to be. Oh, they might change a little bit before they're finally approved. Maybe the final goal is to increase sales by 9% instead of 7%. But you would at least know there was going to be a goal to increase sales. So start with the CEO. Proactively, you set up the appointment. You go talk to them. Find out what the goals are going to be and who the goal owners are going to be. And then once you know the goal owners, go meet with those goal owners. So at Caterpillar, if I met with the CEO in August, I set up meetings then with the goal owners in September to go talk with them. And sometimes it's especially important if it's a new goal owner or a new goal. It might not take as much lead time if it's someone you've already been working with. But we want to confirm here that learning has a role to play. This would be a high-level needs analysis, if you will. Caterpillar, when I was CLO, generally had 7 top-level goals. Every year, learning could help accomplish all 7 of those goals. But it's possible you might have a goal from time to time that learning does not have a role in. So that can happen. So usually learning can help accomplish that goal. And if it can, then you want to meet with the staff in their department and determine what learning programs make sense. And this is where you might do a more detailed needs analysis. And if you're going to try to move the needle on a high-level company goal, like increasing sales, increasing employee engagement, improving leadership, then chances are a short 30-minute or 60-minute course isn't going to do very much for you. Let's just be honest here. If it were that simple, everyone would be doing more of it. To move the needle on these tough goals, it's going to require a program or programs. And a program can consist of multiple courses, different types of modalities. So it's going to take hours and hours of learning in order to move the needle, like to increase sales. It won't be easy. And you have to identify the target audience, probably by name, who really needs this learning. When does it have to be completed? You're going to want to reach agreement with the goal owner on that program. So once you might work with their staff to figure out what makes sense, you're going to have to go back and have another meeting with the goal owner, like the head of sales, and get agreement that this makes sense to the head of sales, the target audience makes sense, the completion date makes sense. You're going to also want to reach agreement with the goal owner on the planned impact. So how much of an impact is this program that was just laid out to you? How much impact can that program have on your goal to increase sales? If the goal is to increase sales by 10%, how much of that might come from learning? Maybe 2% of the 10% comes from learning. And then what are our targets for other key measures, like the number of participants, like the completion date? We're also going to have to get agreement on roles and responsibilities, which play a really critical role for strategic goal-based learning. And then once you have the plan figured out, you're going to have to jointly manage the program to achieve the planned objective. So from what I've just laid out, you can see there's a lot more that goes into strategic goal-based learning than a typical course. And I wouldn't suggest that this becomes the norm, that this is what you do most of. It's way too time-consuming for that. But as we go through the next hour together, think if there aren't some key goals in your organization that would be worth dedicating this time, this level of effort to really making a difference and helping your CEO accomplish their objectives. Here's an example of a carefully planned program, just to make concrete what I'm talking about. Let's say we're helping Chen, the VP of Manufacturing, who has a goal by the CEO and board of directors to reduce injuries by 25%. So we go talk to Chen and we agree that people are getting hurt working in the factories because they don't know any better. And if that's the case, learning should actually have the biggest contribution of anything you could do to reduce injuries. And this is what we believed at Caterpillar for our factories. And we might agree with Chen that learning by itself, properly developed and communicated and reinforced, should lead to a 60% contribution to that 25% reduction. So 60% times 25% is a 15% reduction in injuries due just to learning. That's going to be our plan, which both Chen and we in L&D have agreed to. That's our target. Think of this as the Phillips level 4. Isolated impact. Then we ask ourselves, what do we have to do to achieve that? Well, we have to develop 2 brand new courses by January 31st. We have to reach 3,000 unique participants. They're going to take 2 courses each, so that's 6,000 participants in total. We want it done early in the fiscal year because your strategic learning needs to be accomplished as early as possible in your fiscal year. If you're dealing with senior leaders, it's all about what you can deliver in this fiscal year. Not next year, not 2 years out, this fiscal year. So you want to complete your course as early as possible so it has the maximum amount of time left in the year to have an impact on your goals. And we have a cost budget there as well, $70,000. Effectiveness measures, we naturally want a high level 1 participant reaction. If there's some testing involved, we want them to do well on the learning, a high pass rate. Most importantly though, especially for something like safety training, we want a very high level of application. Maybe 95% say they intend to apply it right at the end of the course. And if we were to follow up later, we find that 90% actually are applying it. And if we do all of this, and if we get the 60% contribution, then that should lead to a 50% ROI. So everybody would be happy with this. We've helped the VP of manufacturing accomplish one of the company's top 5 or 7 goals. And it's been a good investment for the company. And we've reached 3,000 people to do it. This is an example of a carefully planned program where you set the targets in advance in collaboration with the goal owner and the supervisors and the subject matter experts in those areas. Now, I mentioned roles and responsibilities here, and this becomes really important for the strategic goal-based learning. So here is the listing. And at Caterpillar, this was so important for this type of learning. I actually put this into a contract that we had both parties sign. I would sign it at the bottom, pledging what Cat you would do. And then the head of sales or others would also have to sign on the bottom line, agreeing that they would perform their roles and responsibilities. So we are going to, at L&D, work with the goal owner to agree on a target audience, design and deliver the program. That's our expertise. We can do that. We will suggest how the goal owner can communicate it. And maybe we'll even write up some communications for them if they're not comfortable doing that. We'll communicate registrations and any attendance issues to make sure we get all the target audience we want. We'll suggest how supervisors can reinforce the learning. We won't assume they're good at that. They probably don't know how to do that. So they'll need help from us. So that's our responsibility to help them do it. And then we'll brief the head of sales and maybe the supervisors monthly as the program rolls out. Over on the other side, the right-hand side here, the goal owner, they have to commit obviously to the budget, to achieving the impact. They have to make the subject matter experts available on time or else we won't hit our targets. They do need to communicate the importance before and during the learning. They will need to make sure the target audience signs up and completes it. After all, I can't make their employees do anything. Only they can. So we're experts in learning, but they're not my employees. I cannot force them to take the training. That'll have to be the goal owner. It'll also have to be up to the goal owner to reinforce that learning because, again, they don't report to me. They report to the supervisor in sales. But we will work with their supervisors to help them reinforce that, to get the application, because as many of you know, if you don't go to this extra length, you won't get the high application rates that you need if you don't have a reinforcement plan out there. And of course, we will review the progress with them. So roles and responsibilities are really important here. We need clarity and agreement on these. So a quick contrast with role-based learning then. You're beginning to see now how it's different. That this strategic goal-based learning is designed and executed to produce specific, measurable results in a given fiscal year. Not just sometime in the future, but this fiscal year. A needs analysis had to be performed to do this well, and you all know how to do that. The question you're asking the goal owner here is, what's it going to take to accomplish your goal for this year? Contrast that with skills or role-based learning, designed to increase skills without a focus on a specific measurable results for this fiscal year. There may not be a needs analysis. Discussion may not be with the goal owner. The question to the supervisor or manager, because usually if you're doing role-based learning, even if you might have asked the goal owner, who should I talk to, they will delegate that down. They'll say, oh, I don't know that. You'll need to talk to so-and-so 2 or 3 levels down in the organization. They're the ones that really know the specific skills that employees need. So one difference is you're not dealing with a goal owner. You're dealing with someone further down. And then the question you're going to ask the supervisors typically is, what skills and capabilities do your employees need for success in their role. Goal-based learning focuses on delivering business results, not just an increase in skill or proficiency. Role-based learning does not focus on the business results. It didn't start there. It doesn't end there. Goal-based learning is a result of a discussion and partnership with the goal owner. Again, what's going to be required to achieve your goal for the fiscal year? Assuming learning has a role to play, then we're trying to work with them to determine what those learning programs are that have to be deployed in Q1 and Q2. Because honestly, Q3 and Q4, the last half of the year, is too late. Too late to have impact this year. You've got to get it out immediately. This should take priority when you set your learning calendar for the year, because you can't develop all of your learning and deliver it in the first quarter. I know that. So what rises to the top of your list? What learning are you going to prioritize? I'm suggesting you ought to prioritize your strategic goal-based learning. Get that out the door first. And then reach clarity on what comprises that learning and who the target audience is by name. And here you have an important role to play. You know, some goal owners will say, oh, yeah, this does sound good. I want it for everyone in my organization. But do they really need it for everyone in your organization? So sometimes our role is to push back on senior leaders, because maybe it doesn't make sense to give it to everybody, at least not to start with. So who really does need this? Or what would be a good group to start with? Because there's an opportunity cost for giving learning to people that don't need it. You've taken their time. And if they don't really need it, you've wasted their time. So let's be sure we're focused on those who really need it. And then by when must it be complete? And here we're talking about primarily mandatory learning, and that's not a bad word. So this is usually mandatory learning. You've developed a by name list, and they have to take this in Q1, let's say, and you're checking to make sure that everyone on that list does take it. And then we talked a bit about the communication plan and the reinforcement plan, and sometimes the effort may be so great there's actually a change management plan involved. Again, you're getting the idea that this can be complicated. It can be complex. It can take more time than developing an introduction to AI, a team building, English as a second language. We're talking about something that takes a lot more effort than one of those simpler courses. To continue, goal-based learning implies joint accountability for results. So we had the joint ownership of the plan up front, where you decided on the learning impact, where both of us commit to that up front. And by the way, that makes it a lot easier at the end of the program when it's all done and you calculate the level 4 isolated impact and you calculate the ROI. The goal owner is not going to challenge you because they've been your partner all along. In fact, they will help defend you at that point. That's an advantage of going through all this partnership building from the very start with the head of sales, the head of manufacturing, whoever it is in your organization. And you set specific measurable targets. So both of you set those and agreed upon them. You jointly own them. There's no finger pointing here. Both of you are doing this all together. You planned it together and you're going to execute it together. That does bring us to disciplined execution. Another difference between goal-based and role-based learning. It's so important for strategic goal-based learning to deliver on the plan that you need to execute it in a special way. Actually, the same way that people in sales execute their annual business plan, the same way that people in manufacturing execute their business plan. You need management style reports at least monthly to answer two questions. Are we on plan year to date? And are we going to make plan by the end of the year? Sometimes it does take a little longer, especially for complex programs, to get things up and running, to get the programs out there. And it is sometimes possible that you can, if you're a month or two behind schedule, you can still make that up. So you might conclude, looking at these reports, that we are a month behind plan, but I think I can make it up as we roll it out and still have the intended impact. If it gets too late in the year, there won't be time to make it up, and you won't be able to accomplish as much. You won't be able to have as much impact as you thought you were going to have. So if it looks like we're not going to make plan then you'd sit around the table and ask yourself, what options do we have to get back on plan? Is there anything we can do to get back on plan? Is there a roadblock that we need to remove? Is it a question of funding? Did I underestimate how much this was going to cost? If so, can I go get more funds, or can I reallocate funds within my department? Bottom line here is that both parties are laser focused on delivering the plan results, the plan that both parties came up with. Let's give you an idea of what that would look like. So here's a program management report. You'll notice on the left here, the unit of measure, the actual, the plan, those are numbers we just looked at. Those were the plan numbers. Now the next four columns over on the right here, year-to-date results, those compared to plan and forecast compared to plan, are the critical elements in a management report. And again, this is exactly the kind of report your salespeople will use, your manufacturing people will use, and others will use in your organization. We did not have to invent this for learning. We're simply borrowing it and applying it in the learning profession because we want to operate with the same level of discipline as sales and manufacturing. We want to be just as good at running our business of learning as they are running their business. So you've got to know, for each important measure that you put a plan in place for, how am I doing? Now this tells me I'm a little below plan for impact. And why would that be? Well, I can scan down the list here. Now I am a little behind in getting people through. I've got 2,800 out of the 3,200, so I'm 93% of unique participants are through. But I was a little late on the completion. So I'm 15 days late on completion, but that isn't too bad. The troubling one is application. 20% below plan for intent to apply, and 23% below on actual application. By the way, if intent to apply is new to you, intent to apply is a leading indicator of actual application. And you can measure application, of course, by survey, sometimes by observation. But if you're doing it by survey, it is easy to measure intent to apply by adding one more question to your existing post-event survey. That post-event survey is where you have all your level 1 questions about the instructor, the content, the environment. Add one more, if you haven't already, asking whether they intend to apply what they just learned. It's so easy to do. Everybody should have an intent to apply question in their post-event survey. So your post-event survey may have 20 level 1 questions and 1 level 3 question. So that is a leading indicator of actual application. And then maybe later you get actual application through observation. Maybe that's best in this setting of manufacturing and injuries. Or in other settings, you could do a follow-up survey 2 or 3 months later to see what the actual application was. In any case, we know if they don't apply it, it cannot have the planned impact. We won't get to the 15% reduction in injuries if we don't get higher application. It's like all these pieces of a puzzle have to fit together. So this is really important. And if this was the first month we saw that application was lagging, we'd put together a plan. We'd go back to Chen and the supervisors in Chen's organization, and we're going to put together a better plan for reinforcement. Maybe they weren't using what we shared with them. Maybe they didn't quite understand it. Maybe they haven't made time. Maybe the supervisors didn't understand how important it was, in which case we're going to get Chen to tell the supervisors how important it is. And their performance review will depend on whether they reinforce this learning. We can make that happen. So we think by making a double down effort on reinforcement by the end of the year, which is what the forecast tells you, by the end of the year, we can get pretty close. 90% application compared to plan of 95%. Pretty close. Close enough to still have the impact we want. And not only that, but notice now the program actually is being rolled out and so well received that Chen has come back and said, can I put another 200 people through at least that first course? And we said, yes, you can. So this one ends up above the target at 107%. And if we do all this, even though we're 2 weeks behind on rolling the course out, we still think we'll be very near plan by the end of the year. So the forecast is to be very close, maybe 13% instead of 15%, but very, very close. And at the end of the day, we're going to make a significant contribution to accomplishing the company's goal of reducing injuries by 25% from learning. So very important. This is the kind of discipline that it takes. You spend all that time planning. Now, here is how you execute it. Oh, by the way, if you're used to using scorecards and dashboards in your organization, they will not work for program management. For program management, you have to have something that compares year-to-date results to plan, and you have to have a forecast, and forecast compared to plan. This is an example of a management type report used to manage learning. Scorecards and dashboards are not created to manage. This is the kind of report that looks forward. That's what the forecast is. How is the year going to end if we don't do something different than I'd already planned on doing? Scorecards and dashboards don't have anything like that. Scorecards and dashboards are great for looking backwards, like out of the rear view windshield of your car. You can look back or in the rear view mirror and see where you've been. But sometimes you want to look out the front windshield and see where you're going. Forecast shows you where you're going. So this is a special type of report used to manage learning. High-level summary, the two types of learning, role-based or skills-based learning. Again, it's a type of learning. It involves identifying roles or personas, which is great to do. And if I were at Caterpillar today, I would want to be doing that. And then developing learning to ensure employees have the skills necessary for success in their role. For example, we'd have skills needed for the role of a sales rep. It is complex. I won't minimize that. Back in the day, 25 years ago, when I first started CAT-U, the competency models were the thing instead of skills models. Most organizations eventually gave up on them. They were too complex. But I really think now, with all the help out there from vendors and software and AI, I think we're at a stage where we can do role-based learning. So it is complex, though, and it is hard to do at scale. It's easy to do for one department. You want to do it for 50,000 employees or 100,000 employees. This is hard at scale. Goal-based learning, this is what we focused on the last half hour, the type of learning developed in partnership, high-level goal owners involved to achieve their goal. Like, what does it take to increase company sales by 10%? Or what does it take to reduce injuries by 25%? Now, this, as you've just seen, is also complex in a different way, but it's still complex. And I'm going to be honest with you, it is hard to do. That's true, but it's necessary. It's necessary for the strategic alignment of learning to the organization's goals. It's necessary if you want to be viewed as a valued strategic business partner. Might it be uncomfortable if you're not used to having discussions with your CEO or with the head of sales, the head of manufacturing, the head of quality? Yes. If you're not comfortable with that, that will take a little getting used to. but they will appreciate your coming to them. They will appreciate your coming to them and talking with them about their goals and their challenges. So it's well worth doing. Let's look at a detailed comparison. Just if you're not quite convinced yet, this is different than what you're already doing. Let me just run you down this list, left and right comparisons here. So on the left, goal-based learning. On the right, right-based learning. Goal-based learning always has to start with the CEO. It cannot be delegated below that. Role-based learning almost never starts at the CEO and starts like at a supervisor level in the organization. Goal-based learning is focused on organizational goals from the CEO and the board of directors. Role-based learning focuses on job roles. Goal-based learning is all about what can we get done this fiscal year. No time frame generally for role-based learning. Goal-based learning, you want agreement on a program, but you can also have agreement on program for role-based, so no difference there. Goal-based, agreement on planned impact for this fiscal year. Typically, there is no discussion of planned impact for role-based learning. Goal-based, we're also going to get agreement on targets for other key measures, like number of participants, application rates. Typically, no agreement on these types of other measures for role-based learning. We need to have clarity and agreement on roles and responsibilities with the goal owner and the supervisors in the goal owner's organization for goal-based learning. Seldom is there any agreement on roles and responsibilities in role-based learning. We have to have a reinforcement plan. So you can't wait and see if you need it. You're going to need it. It's too hard to move the needle and increase sales, reduce injuries, anything like that. You're going to have a reinforcement plan. Usually there is no reinforcement plan in role-based learning. You're also going to want a good communication plan led by the CEO and through the supervisors, with your help perhaps in writing drafts for them and helping prepare them. Typically no communication plan for role-based learning. And then once you have the plan in place, you're going to need a disciplined monthly execution, looking at both year-to-date results and forecasts, comparing both back to plan to see if you're on plan, and if not, what steps you're going to need to take to get back on plan before time runs out. Here in role-based learning, they're not looking at things like this. They're probably using scorecards and dashboards, saying, oh, we've got 55 people through this course, but there was never a target. I don't know. If I ask how many did you want to go through it, there's no answer. We didn't set a goal, but we've got it out there and 55 have taken it. Okay. Planned result for goal-based learning is a measurable impact on the goal. Role-based learning is increased skill proficiency. And again, an increase in skill proficiency is good, but not the same as measurable impact on the goal. Let me tie this into another topic in the learning field, which is popular, and that is alignment to business goals. And more people are talking about this, but I'm afraid they're claiming credit for it when they don't actually deserve it. So let's see what you think here. Goal-based learning lends itself readily to alignment because it starts with the CEO's goals. Remember, you started with your CEO 3 or 4 months before the next fiscal year started, and then you went and talked to all the goal owners. So it started with the CEO. It started with your organization's goals. It could not be any more aligned to your organization's goals. And you can show that in a simple table like this. You got the goals from the CEO, you got the priority order from the CEO. So your CEO told you for the coming fiscal year, increase in sales by 10% is your #1 company goal. You went and talked to the head of sales, and both of you agreed after doing some needs analysis that it would make sense to come up with a consultative selling skills program and new product features training. You identified the target audience by name. You agreed on a completion date. You agreed on other important measures like that application rate, because it takes a lot more effort to get a higher application rate. And then you agreed on a percentage contribution from learning. This is the isolated contribution from learning. So you and the head of sales agreed, and there's a process you can use to step the goal owner through this. You would not simply ask them what percent contribution will come from learning, because they'll have no way to answer that question. So there's a process by which you can walk them through this, so both of you come to agreement on a reasonable number yourself. So 20% here is the agreed upon percentage contribution. If learning by itself is going to get you 20% or 1/5 of the way towards the 10%, then 1/5 of 10% is 2% higher sales due just to learning. Likewise, goal number 2 was reduce injuries by 20%. We came up with a host of office programs and manufacturing programs, factory programs. Here, we believe that learning could contribute 80%. 80% times 20% is a 16% reduction in injuries. Six Sigma is being deployed to increase productivity by 5%. Six Sigma is a training program. Maybe that will contribute 60% towards the 50% or a 3% increase in productivity. We want to increase the leadership score by 2 points. Think like a lot of you probably either have separate leadership surveys, or in your employee engagement survey, you have several questions on leadership. At Caterpillar, we had a 50-question employee engagement survey. 7 of those 50 questions were about leadership. So we had an index for leadership. So that was a very easy way to measure leadership. It'd be the percent favorable. So maybe it was 65% favorable, though marking the top 2 boxes on a 5-point Likert scale. And I want to increase that by 1 point of favorability through learning. Cost efficiency, want to be 4% more efficient, and we think learning can contribute 30%, yielding a 1.2% increase in efficiency. So you see how this works, and it's all laid out very clearly, and you could use this as an overhead, a PowerPoint, in a presentation to your executive group, indicating what the plan is for the year. And they can see immediately that you know what their goals are in their priority order. You've gone and talked to the goal owners. Both of you have agreed on the programs. You've agreed on the target audience. You've agreed on the completion date. And most importantly, like any good person in business, you've agreed on the business plan for this learning. And you're willing to hold yourself accountable to delivering these results. So a much higher level of accountability than some L&D people are used to. All right, so you see how it looks for goal-based learning. Perfect match for strategic alignment. Role-based learning does not naturally lend itself to alignment because it does not start with your organization's goals. Now, some organizations do what they believe is similar, and they do that by tagging their courses by organizational goals. So, for example, if you have courses developed for salespeople, you could tag them as sales. And I know you would think, at least indirectly, any course you develop ought to have some positive impact. So it ought to do something to help improve sales. You didn't design it that way specifically, perhaps, but it should have some impact on sales. So if you do this sort of thing, if you tag or identify courses that some might reasonably conclude must help support the goal, That's called backwards mapping. Strategic alignment was frontwards mapping. This is backwards mapping because it starts with the courses and then backs into the goals. So let's just say we did that in a company, and I know what the CEO's goals are. So how powerful would it be to show this then as a presentation to your CEO? And you'd be able to say, you know, we identified 6 roles in sales, and we have 15 courses on offer to support those 6 roles. We identified 20 roles to reduce injuries, and we have 32 courses on offer to support that. It does provide a nice inventory. And honestly, CEOs often do like to see inventories. In fact, my CEO at Caterpillar asked for this type of inventory. We didn't have roles at the time, but he was curious about number of courses and how I divided up my team's time and our budget by different areas in the company. So it has a function. And if we did this and we had no courses supporting sales and no courses supporting injuries, I mean, that would immediately tell you you were not aligned in any way. But the point I'm trying to make is, don't get carried away with this. If I did this, I would not claim we did a strategically aligned learning because it did not start with the goal. So, answer to the question, does this mapping constitute strategic alignment? No. So, if you're doing this, okay to do this, and it might serve other functions, but you can't really, honestly, say that you've done strategic alignment. All you've done is backwards mapping. The learning was not developed in response to a needs analysis and was not developed or executed in partnership with a goal owner. So maybe sales does go up a little bit. Maybe you're wondering if in this scenario, since you had 15 courses out there, whether learning had a role to play. It'd be hard to say though, because you didn't put any plan out there to begin with. What you will be able to say if you do this kind of an approach is you could add a column over here to the right and say increase in proficiency level. That you should be able to measure. And you might be able to say as a result of your 15 courses that the average proficiency level for those 6 roles in sales increased from 3.1 to 3.4 on a 5-point proficiency scale. So you could say I got a 0.3 increase in proficiency as a result of these courses. That would be a true statement. And that has value. But not the same as strategic alignment. And it does not allow you to say that we contributed to that 10% increase in sales. You would hope there was some impact, but it wasn't set up or managed that way. So what's our conclusion here? Conclusion is that role-based learning is not enough. And it will not take the place of goal-based learning, even if courses exist that align with those goals. In other words, even if you've done the backwards mapping, that doesn't make it strategic. Strategic has to be proactive. You start with the goal. You develop the courses explicitly to help achieve them. You develop the communication reinforcement plans to make sure that the new behaviors, the new knowledge was applied. Strategic, goal-based learning is different than role-based learning in its design and its execution. Now, is it possible that perhaps some of the courses you already have as a part of your skills or role-based learning can be repurposed for strategic? Sure, that's possible. If as a result of your needs analysis, you identify a need for learning, which also just happens to be met by some learning you have on the shelf that's already developed. Great, wonderful, that's serendipity. So some of the skills content might be used for strategic learning, but now you're going to work it into your detailed plan with specific measurable goals and accountability. Remember that skills-based learning is passive versus proactive. Most organizations I see doing skill-based learning are putting it into practice, and then some are trying to measure increases in proficiency level and report on that. Other than that, though, it's really about reporting number of participants, completion rates, and maybe level 1 participant reaction. And those are not high-level measures of success, as we all know. So the high-level measures of success are level 3 application, level 4 impact, level 5 ROI. Those are your high-level measures of success, not level 1. It's nice they liked it. Nice they would recommend it. Nice they found it worthwhile use of their time. But that's not a measure of success. Neither is completion. So, skills-based learning developed for a different purpose. So it's not surprising we wouldn't manage it the same way. We wouldn't evaluate it the same way. It's a different type of learning, meant to increase the proficiency level, the skill level. Only by chance will skills-based learning help achieve this year's business goal. And we don't want to leave it to chance. We want to draw a straight line. So you need both. Strategic learning, you need that to be viewed as a strategic business partner to help achieve the organization's most important goals. It is this type of strategic goal-based learning that is high visibility. And you want some high visibility learning. You want some learning that's very visible to the CEO, that they can brag about what you've done, that senior level leaders know what contribution you've made, that you're viewed as that important business partner. You are helping to deliver business results that are measurable in the fiscal year. Skills or role-based learning does provide excellent direction for employees in their development and should help increase the overall proficiency level, which is a good thing. But it's not going to be very visible to the CEO. And even when it is visible, just put yourself in the CEO's position for a minute. And let's say you're making a pitch, and your pitch is that as a result of your role-based learning, you increase the skills proficiency from 3.1 to 3.3. What does that mean to the CEO? I mean, they can do the math. That's a 0.2 increase. But how much of a difference does that make? Well, what do I get for that? What does it do for my goals? What do I tell the board of directors about 0.2? I don't know. I mean, I'm glad it went up instead of down, but 0.2, I don't know. I don't know what it means. Whereas, if you can say, as a result of our learning efforts by both the sales department and the learning department, we get an extra 2% increase in sales. No more needs to be said. Everyone appreciates exactly what that means to our bottom line. So you need both, is the point we're trying to make. Maybe a quick story here. I was working with an organization that was about 15 or 18 months into their role-based learning journey. They had 15 people full-time working on coming up with roles across their organization, and then identifying learning to support that and generating the learning journeys. 15 people working for 15 or 18 months doing that. Now, just in the middle of our engagement with them, the company released its quarterly results, and they were terrible, really below the market's expectations. And they were so bad. Just reading the article in the Wall Street Journal, I knew what was coming. There were going to be immediate cost cuts across that company as the CEO tried to get the company back on track. So sure enough, within 2 days, we get a call and says, Dave, we really liked what you've been doing, but those 15 people you've been working with, they were fired yesterday. So they spent the last 18 months developing their role-based learning. And now all 15 of them are gone. Now, I didn't have a chance to talk to the CEO and ask about that, but I'm guessing that when cuts had to be made, and all the head of learning could say is, don't cut these 15. They've spent 18 months working on role-based learning. It's going to help us be more proficient. The CEO is thinking, so what? What is it doing for my bottom line? I've got to make cuts right now. I'm not going to cut sales. I'm not going to cut manufacturing. I don't see what I'm getting for this. I'm stopping this program or cutting it out entirely. And the head of learning was removed as well. So again, be careful here. The role-based learning is great. I would do it. But don't do it at the expense of strategic goal-based learning. If you've got your marketing hat on, if you're thinking about getting approval for next year's budget or staffing request, you want to lead with your strategic goal-based learning, the impact it can make on highly visible results for your organization. And then say, and in addition to that, we're working continually to increase the proficiency level of our employees, which will help us in the long term. But you led with the impact you're going to have on business results. That's what justifies your budget. Don't rely on increased proficiency levels to justify your budget. All right, so what steps can you take if you want to implement strategic learning? Well, meet with the CEO and goal owners before the new year starts. Learn the goals and the goal owners. Talk with the goal owners, see if it has a role to play. And if it does, then follow up with them, jointly plan the learning, conduct the needs analysis, design and develop the learning, identify the target audience, the completion dates, the targets for level 3 application at a minimum. Create your communication and reinforcement plans, get agreement on roles and responsibilities, and then jointly manage the learning using management reports. So, does it take more effort? Yes, it does. But it's also a lot more satisfying. You'll get more out of this. It places you in a pivotal, highly visible role in your organization. So, now that you have a better understanding of what we mean by this strategic goal-based learning, I'm curious. Let's launch poll number 2. And see, now that I've given you this, do you think your organization has this? It might be different than what you first were thinking. So let's just see. We asked about role-based learning to begin with. Now we're going to ask about this so you have a better idea of what it is. Let's see if you do some of this. Early returns are promising here, running about neck and neck between yes and no, which is great. I'd love to think that's the case. That's fantastic. Let some more results come in here. A little under half of people have responded so far. Looks like we're leveling out. It's running about a tie here. All right. All right, I think we can close the poll. Running about a tie between yes and no. But you know what? The number saying yes is higher than I thought it might be. So that's wonderful. I think that's really encouraging. And then last, Is there a place in your organization for this? So for those 45% of you that indicated you're already doing it, obviously there is. So let's see if we pick up any of the other 45% that said you're not doing it. Let's see if, having listened to what I've had a chance to present, that if you think your organization could use something like this. So we have poll 3 up now. Is there a place in your organization? We expect the numbers to be higher than the 45%. So I really think in most organizations, there should be a place for this. I know sometimes that your charter is somewhat restricted. At Caterpillar, our charter was to help Caterpillar accomplish its business goals. So we had a high level charter. I know sometimes your charter is not that high. You might have a different group responsible for this. You may be more focused on helping some business units. You may be focused just on onboarding or compliance training or just on leadership development. So I know that not everybody might be able to use this. All right, well, we picked up about another 15% or so swung from the last poll into this.
Thank you so much everyone for attending today's session. I do have some quick announcement for all of you, so stay connected till the end. And before I move forward, I would love to tell you all, if you have any question regarding this session, feel free to reach out to our speaker Dave Vance, and also you can post your queries over the social media by tagging GSDC, and we'll make sure that one of our subject matter expert will get back to you on the questions that you have. Thank you so much again for attendance. So here's some quick announcement that I have for all of you. So this is regarding today's featured session we had on. You can opt out for this certification, certified learning and development professional. You can use this promo code which is LND20 to get amazing discount which is 20% off. So the certifications are globally recognized one. Will be providing learning resources where you'll be getting a lot of case studies to work on, e-learnings and book of knowledge. These certifications are lifelong learnings which gives you learning flexibility as well, and you'll be getting chance to connect with our training partner channel, and you'll be having a lot of opportunity to work on capstone project. You'll find the offer details, promo code and link in the chat box. Also, this is utility tool. You can use this AUG100 as a code to get 100% off. What this tool is about, this tool will help you to improve your LinkedIn profile score, your AI skill score. Also, it will help you to build AI generated resume. So do check this tool out. I've already shared the utility link in the chat box. And also let me make this announcement that we'll be conducting the another webinar series on AI implementation from 15 to 19 December 2025 with the time slot that is 7:30 a.m. Central, 9:30 p.m. Singapore, 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern. We do have incredible panel of AI experts aligned for this series, so please do join us for the remaining sessions. And also we are conducting this another webinar series on applying ISO 42001 and ISO 27001 across industry. We do have industry experts aligned for this entire series which is started from today, that is 15 to 19 December 2025 with the time slot that is 10:30 p.m. Singapore, 8 p.m. Indian Standard, 8:30 a.m. Central and 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please do join us for all the remaining sessions as well. And we do have these three winners who have referred maximum people to this specific series. Let's congratulate to them, and we'll be getting back to the final winners at the end of this series with the rewards which is worth $400. And top three winners will be featured on the GSTC Wall of Fame. So you still have a time to refer maximum people and be the winner. And in case if you want to be a speaker for our upcoming events as a featured global speaker, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to share your speaker profile with us. As you all know that we do have a global platform for you, that is Learning Capsule, webinar and podcast. And also we would love to connect with you all over social media. You can scan this QR, connect with us over LinkedIn, check our website for more information regarding the certification programs and any other offerings that if you are looking for. You can get it all the information from the website itself. Also you can connect with us over WhatsApp group to get daily update on event, webinar and bootcamps. And please do share your valuable feedback on the Trustpilot and reviews.io. So you find the link in the chat box. And thank you so much for joining today's session. I hope to see you all for the upcoming sessions as well. Until then, keep learning and take care of yourself. Thank you. I'll see you again. Bye bye.